number one, is very powerful lights that don't get hot. Again, heat dilates blood vessels, bring more blood to the surface. That would block the penetration of light. So if you've ever heard of red light sauna, it's self-defeating. You don't want to combine those two things together.
All right, we're going to talk about red light therapy. And my guest, Dr. Carl Rothschild, is my expert and possibly your expert too. So we're going to dive into this and find out what it's all about. Now, I have used red light therapy at the dermatologist. I also have a unit that I use on the dog. He has some hip issues and it has worked. And I wanted to find out more because this is something I think is easy to access, but knowing how it works is incredibly helpful. So, Dr. Carl, I really appreciate your time and give us the backstory on, one, how you got involved, and then what this is all about.
You know, I started in the 1970s, and I was my version of a hippie. What that meant to me was that I was kind of more interested in helping people than the money. And I don't mind making money, but my focus was on, I don't know, I had this idea that I wanted to help as many people as I could in a natural way. So I became a chiropractor in the 70s, and that was my intention, and I did fairly well as a chiropractor. And then about 26 or 27 years ago, I was introduced to red light therapy. What that meant to me was I got this guy, he's a medical doctor, professor out of USC, and I had known him before he knew anything about red light therapy, and he was the first one actually to create, to bring that technology to the United States for humans. And he was the first one, and his company was first to get the FDA clearance using that device. And it looks like a flashlight. And he said, here, use this flashlight. And of course, my eyes are rolling because by that point, I was 20 years into practice, and I figured I knew everything. Well, here I am using this flashlight on some of my patients, and it worked. Oh my God! Within a month for sure, we saw significant changes, and it revolutionized my practice. I was able to do things that I never dreamt possible before. You know, this lady comes in with a gum disease, and she goes, "Can you help my gum disease?" And I said, "I'm not a dentist." And, but the only thing we knew for sure back then was that the lights could not hurt. And in fact, in the 50 years that this technology has been studied, there's never been a recorded side effect. You couldn't hurt somebody with this stuff if you tried. And sure enough, within a relatively short period of time, we helped her with her gum disease. And this guy with his kidney problem. And this guy had come in with a ripped Achilles tendon, and he was slated for surgery. And when I say ripped, it wasn't completely ripped. It was about 75% ripped. And by the time he was ready for surgery, which was about a week later, we treated him every day with the light. He didn't need surgery any longer. So, yeah, we were starting to have amazing results. And over the years, the technology's gotten better. And by the way, in the beginning, they didn't know why it worked. And eventually they did. And I'm going to go over the technology with you and how and why it works. But I first want to indicate that about 13, 14 years ago, there was a discovery by accident again that for whatever reason, they saw that certain elements of red light could actually assist in weight loss. Now, you know how popular weight loss is. I mean, have you seen anything more popular?
Oh, yeah.
It's all over. You know, people are willing to do whatever it takes. They'll inject themselves with this or that. They'll have things removed. They'll do whatever to lose weight because it's not easy for some people. Now, my mother was a Weight Watch executive. So when I was a kid, we never had a good thing to eat. I mean, you know, we had bean sprouts instead of spaghetti. we had bread that was low-calorie bread. It tasted like cardboard. I mean, but I understood better about the fat head. It's, you know, some people find that insulting, but you know, a person that has a certain kind of mentality where they're sort of addicted to food. They have a compulsion. And my whole family was fat. I mean, until my mom made us all go on this diet and whatever.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah.
But then, you know, as a chiropractor, I know, you know, if I can get someone to lose that 20, 30, 40 pounds, their spine's going to be grateful and we're going to have better results with them. So I emphasize diet and weight loss. But then we find out that red light could actually assist in that process. I said, you know what? I'm going to get even more involved. And I started manufacturing all the way back then. And over the years, things get better, as you know, in the world of technology. They get stronger, they get lighter, they get whatever. And then the next thing that happened was COVID. And our practitioners, we had hundreds throughout the country at that point, that were using our equipment, but they wanted something that required less physical contact between the patient and the provider. We came up with the bed. With the bed, when someone says, how much does it cost? I said, well, first of all, you're going to save yourself thousands of dollars right off the bat because you don't need staff for this. So you just put it in there, and after the first visit, the person can get it, after you show them and orient them, they get in and out of the bed themselves. So for COVID, it was perfect for us. And we just got it. We just made it as a substitute for what we had been making up to that point. Within a month of us having delivered the first series of beds, things started happening that blew our minds. For example, let's take Arnett, who was having a heart attack, if not once a week, twice a week. I'd never heard of that. He was dying. And that had been going on for 12 years. So 12 years ago, now 13 or 14 years ago, they had implanted a defibrillator into his chest. And so every time he died, it would zap him back to life. So by the time we met him 12, 13 years down the road, he was not in good shape. He was dying.
Yeah.
And so the practitioner called me up and said, should I even treat him? I mean, I don't want him having a heart attack in my office. And I said, let's just treat him for 5 minutes. A normal treatment a dose is 12 minutes. But let's just treat him for 5 minutes and stay in the room the whole time. Let's see what happens. Because we knew the worst that will happen is nothing. You can't hurt somebody with this stuff. So there's either nothing or an upside. When that patient goes home that night, and I'm going to tell you that was almost 2 years ago, he hasn't had a heart attack since. He's had more treatment, but no more heart attack.
It was that quick.
It was that quick. And it's not always that quick, but for him it was. But it took him about a month for everything to come back. Imagine 12 years of dying, and now his energy's back. His blood pressure is normal. His pulse is normal. His erectile dysfunction is no longer an issue. It's just one thing after another after another. Seeing someone like that, it's just startling. I mean, we don't know what to expect. And when you have something like this, it's not like we say, well, let's cut out one of his kidneys and see if that'll make a change. We're not doing that. We're not doing anything invasive. We're not doing anything that can be harmful. We're just trying it out. And that's what I tell everybody. Try it. 6 visits, try it. If you don't see a difference in 6 visits, which very rarely happens, then it won't work for you. But I hardly ever heard that. I don't care what you got. Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, autoimmune disease. I mean, you can go on and almost anything that we've heard. Rheumatoid arthritis. We had a lady that had a stroke, and after 8 visits, she was better than before she ever had the stroke. I don't even know what to say. It sounds unbelievable. Your average science-oriented person thinks I'm crazy. It sounds like snake oil. You're telling me that everything can be resolved with this? Well, if someone loses a finger, we're not growing the finger back. But outside of that, we've seen unbelievably beautiful results. So this lady has, she's in stage 4 renal failure, meaning that any day now she's going to have to go on kidney dialysis. And 2 weeks of red light therapy, and all her chemistries are back. The blood serum tests are all normal, and she's not going to have to go on dialysis. And so before I go into how and why this works, I want to tell you why it's not everywhere. Because you can make a lot more money doing this than doing that. And that's the world of capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I like capital. But in the world of health, it's a scary thing. Because if you got a doctor who even unconsciously is motivated by it, he's going to make $30,000 or not. What's his decision going to be? Can I make $30,000 or not make $30,000? So it's about money. It's about power. It's about decision making. So if I'm telling you that if everyone got in a full body bed 3 times a week for the rest of their lives, guess what? The amount of drugs needed, the amount of hospital stays, and the amount of surgeries would drop significantly. And that's a lot of money there. And that's why it's not everywhere. Imagine someone with a 3rd-degree burn that was told it's going to take 6 months to heal, 6 months of drugs and permanent scarring. And by the end of the second week, the pain was all gone. By the end of the third week, it was gone. Not even redness. I mean, it was gone. So why wouldn't it be in every wound center? Why wouldn't it be in every OR? Because right after surgery, if a person got in a full body bed, their recovery would be outstanding.
Have you used this yourself?
Of course. I use it 3 times a week, just like a workout. I got in it today. And it's not as startling for me because I don't have a particular problem. But what I always taught my patients, and I've seen thousands and thousands of patients, what I always taught them or tried to teach them is that your well-being is like a candle that burns really bright from the beginning all the way to the end and then sputters out and dies. That's how your life should be in the world of health and well-being and death and whatever. And most people, that doesn't happen. The last 20 years of their life, they're not thrilled. Whatever they did when they were younger didn't work really well. So when they're older, they can't function as well. They can't walk sometimes. They certainly can't. Sometimes they can't bathe themselves. They can't wipe themselves. They can't feed themselves. I don't want that. So I get into bed, but that's not the only thing I do. I don't eat foolishly. I try to not put anything in my body that could do me harm. You know why I do that? I'm not the most disciplined person in the world, but I'm scared to wind up like that, like this person who didn't take care of themselves. And if you want to get scared, go to a senior living center where the people are not doing so well, and see what's going on for them. And do you want to wind up like that? If there's anything you can do to not wind up like that, I suggest you do that. And that means eating smart, not drinking a lot of alcohol. If you can eliminate it, even better. Not eating starchy carbohydrates, simple sugars, and soda. I can go on for half an hour about all the things you shouldn't do, but what you should do is eat smart. Have some protein, have some fruits and vegetables, and then that's it. If you want to have, dessert from time to time, just not every day. And don't drink alcohol all the time. It's about taking care of yourself. And I am telling you, adding red light therapy to that regime makes a lot of sense. Does that make sense when I've answered that? But that I use it 3 times a week, but it's not a startling change. By the way, people who are worse off, if they're a mess and they get into bed, they will see more dramatic changes than someone like myself who don't have a dramatic issue. I'm just working on the maintenance. It's more for me on what I don't want in my future. I used to teach a class, will you be dancing when you're 75? I'm talking to 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. And I'm telling you, talk to your 75-year-old self and think what they would be saying to you or what you're doing to yourself today. And you're not taking care of yourself. You can hear them crying in the background saying, would you please take better care so I don't have a lousy senior citizen life? The elderly shouldn't necessarily be in a wheelchair and not functional. I can rattle on forever. I wrote the book. I recommend people read the book. I don't make a dime out of it. It all goes to charity. It's called Illuminated Healing. And it's all about red light therapy. I don't want to come across as crazy, but I am crazy about this stuff because I am witnessing people calling me up saying, hey, I couldn't walk, now I can walk. I couldn't see well, and now I can see much better. How about this guy that had, it's called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. I had never heard of that before. He had LHON. There's a whole community of that. What it is it's kind of multiple sclerosis of the retina. In other words, it's eating away at his retina, and he is doomed to be blind. Well, fortunately, we got him when he was less than half blind, and what we were able to do with the lights is to halt the progression. That's what the lights will do with multiple sclerosis in general. It's like a cavity in the nervous system. Once that's eaten away, it's not going to grow back, but if we can halt the progression, that's the glorious thing. A lot of symptoms, like he had headaches and migraines and all kinds of stuff, and that halted, but also the progression. They had never seen that before. His blindness is not going to be complete. He'll be somewhat blind, but he's grateful. He was surrendering to being totally blind. He started this all in the 1970s. And you're telling me that now I'm going to hear more and more than ever, thank you for giving me my life back. What else is there? I don't mind getting paid, but what else is there in a world of a health practitioner who wants to help people? Who wouldn't want to hear that? Thank you for giving my life back. Not occasionally, but more regularly than ever before.
Some of the research that you include on your website, you're talking about the 60s when they were using red light lasers to cure tumors. and this was practicing on hamsters. But that's when they noticed that his skin wounds were healing, and the red light therapy was the key. Why is it just now becoming more available and more promoted? What's the deal with that?
What happened was the bed. When you expose the whole body at the same time, that's when you're getting these amazing results. I don't mind people getting a mask or a helmet or whatever. That's fine. That's what I manufactured for many years. But the bed has taken it to a whole nother level, and so the interest has exploded. And then with China producing, hope you don't take this the wrong way, but junk, they're getting junk. But what you want is the highest medical grade lights possible. I'm going to go over what you should look for, but I want to tell you how and why it works. And it does sound like snake oil, but it does affect conceivably every cell of your body. So let's talk about the two separate mechanisms. One's about weight loss, and one's about everything else. So let's talk about weight loss because it's simple, it's easy. When it first was accidentally discovered 13-something years ago, they didn't know why it worked. They just knew it did. And what they found is that when they were doing plastic surgery, and the liposuction in particular, they found that fat came out easier if they did red light therapy before. So they assumed that the light melted the fat. Well, that's not what happened, as it turned out. What they learned is that there's certain wavelengths of red light, not any other color, red light, that will actually change the permeability of the fat cell wall. That means the fat cell wall for a day becomes more porous and allows the fat contents to leak out into the interstitial tissue. And then with a unique protocol, we move that fat away from the fat cell and eventually through the lymphatic system to the liver for use or elimination. And it works. It absolutely works. So that's that. It's not about freezing the fat or boiling the fat, lasering fat. It's not about radio frequency or ultrasonic cavitation. All that's about destroying fat cells. Because fat cells have a bad rap, a bad name. People think, it's to be gotten rid of. But the truth of the matter, it's essential tissue. And as a chiropractor, I'm not interested in destroying tissue, especially essential tissues involved with stem cell production and hormone production and many other things. You don't want to destroy that. So rather, in lieu of that, we can temporarily change the fat cell wall to allow the contents to leak out. And then within a day, the fat cells are back to normal. So I'm going to put the fat loss mechanism aside now for a second. And now I want to talk to you about all the other stuff, all the healing and all the hair restoration and skin looking beautiful and tightening and contouring and all that stuff. That's a whole different mechanism that they've been working on for over 50 years. And again, they didn't know why it worked 50 years ago. Now they know why it works. And it all comes down to some terminology that I want to talk to you about. In the world of biology, when I went to school, we learned that there was one mitochondria in every cell of the body, and that turns out to not be true. For example, the heart, which has a huge demand for energy, each heart cell has over 5,000 mitochondria. So what's the mitochondria? Mitochondria is involved in energy. It's the powerhouse of your body. It produces ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. And with that energy currency, it allows your body to function and heal. So if you have a less than perfect functioning mitochondrial system, which is assumed that's going to happen with everyone as they get older, and you see I use the word assume, but if they did the right things, including red light therapy, that doesn't necessarily have to happen where you lose the proper functioning of your mitochondrial system. So the mitochondria is involved with producing this ATP, and the ATP is why you can live healthy or not. If you have a poorly functioning system, it will lead to disease and eventually death. So what did they find? They found that in the mitochondria are chromophores. Now, a chromophore is something that's sensitive to the sun. And the sun affects us dramatically, just as it affects in a different way, but just as important as it would affect a tree or grass. And imagine what a tree or grass would do if there was no sun. It would die. And so would we. Without sun, we wouldn't do well. And what we've learned are there are 4 glorious elements of sunlight that we have magnified it many times and drive it deep into someone's body and trying to affect as many, because we have head to toe, affect as many cells as possible. So the chromophore, called cytochrome C oxidase, is an enzyme that is sensitive to sunlight, certain wavelengths of sunlight, of near infrared and to some degree red. And that's what we use, is near infrared and red. And we stimulate the cytochrome C oxidase to stimulate the mitochondria to come back to life so that every cell in your body could conceivably be affected. I don't care if it's bone, if it's nerve, I don't care if it's an organ or a gland. I don't care what it is. They all have the same thing. Your body's made up of tissue. Every tissue is made up of cells. And your cells can all have this mitochondria. And some of them have fewer, but all of them have a lot of mitochondria. Listen, the mitochondria makes up 10% of your body weight. I just want you to think about that. Because your body is bone and blood and hair and skin, and yet and still 10% of your body weight is made up of mitochondria. That's how prevalent it is. That's how important it is. And keeping your mitochondria healthy is so critical. And it's an element of sunlight that we use. So to that end, I want to explain to you the word infrared. A lot of people throw that word around. There is no such thing as just infrared. It's either far infrared or near infrared. Far infrared is a fancy way of getting deep penetrating heat. It's not going to give you any of the long-lasting results that I just described to you. It's the near infrared that we used to call cold therapy, cold laser, cold light. And it didn't literally get cold, but it didn't get hot. Heat is the enemy. So these poorly made lights that are coming out get hot. And they get hot because they're cheap, and the manufacturers don't typically know what they're doing. You want cool burning, but very strong light. And that's where the money is. That's where the specialty is. That's what I'm involved with, using the strongest light that don't get hot. Why is heat the enemy? Heat dilates blood vessels, bringing more blood to the surface, and that would block the penetration of light. If someone's back would get red, if someone's front would get, or face, whatever, would get red, that means there's more blood that would block the penetration of light. You don't want that. You want a cool, burning light.
I've used this kind of light for my dog. The fact that they'll sit there as opposed to just running off and playing or getting distracted is an indication that, to me, that it's working.
The vets started with this before we did. So they didn't have the same restrictions that we have on using any equipment on humans. So the veterinarians were using red light therapy for large dogs and horses way back when. I can't tell you. It probably was in the early 1990s. So that predates us using it in the mid-1990s. And so when I started, the vets were already using red light therapy. And in fact, I went to some conventions of red light therapy to learn more, but also to introduce them to even stronger equipment to use on animals. But I got so busy with humans, I wasn't really pursuing the veterinarians at that point. But it's a great thing for horses. It's a great thing for large dogs. Most smaller dogs and cats and things, they're not going to stay still. But yeah, I mean, red light therapy will work on everybody and everything, every animal, every human. I apologize. I'm going to come across to you as I'm crazy, but I love this stuff. You know, what drives business is passion and belief. If you believe in something and you have a passion behind it, even if you're a lousy communicator, you can have a business. And that's what I teach people. You use this bed in your business for a certain period of time. And within a month or two, you're going to be maybe as nutty as I am. Because now you're going to get people looking you right in the eye and saying, you saved my life. Holy mackerel. And it's very rewarding and it's very easy. I just interviewed this one lady who's in love with this stuff. She's a patient. And she said, towards the end of the testimonial video I did with her, she said, by the way, I referred 18 people to the office where I'm getting treated. Because that's what happens. It explodes. Almost any other therapy, you have to convince people. Chiropractic wasn't so easy to convince people that it was the right thing. There was a lot of bad press about chiropractic. It was very controversial. But red light doesn't have the controversy. The damn thing works. What can I say? When I talk to some people who are more interested in making money, the first thing that they come off is, it must be a placebo. What? This guy was having heart attacks and now he's not? I have a lady that wrote me an email. She said, if this is how normal people feel every day, I can't believe I've been missing out all this time. She wrote me this. She was unbelievably depressed. She was just one level lower than suicidal. She hated her life. And after 2 weeks of using red light therapy, that's not true anymore. She loves her light. And that's how incredible this stuff is, even with the brain. So the lights can get through your skull and get to the brain. The lights can get through your eyes and help you with everything under the eye, in the eye. So macular degeneration, macular edema, uveitis, glaucoma. Floaters are a slam dunk. You have floaters, get in the damn, I get excited here. Get in the bed and you will see unbelievable results. What I believe, even if somebody has a local problem, as a holistic doctor, I want to treat the whole body, head to toe. And so that's why not only are the results better and more pronounced with full body treatment, you're going to, even with a local problem, like someone has an elbow problem, I'm still, as a chiropractor, I'm going to treat the neck, I'm going to treat the nervous system all the way down to the elbow and everything around. So I love the full body bed. The person gets in and out of themselves, so you don't need staff for this. When people are asking about this particular bed, it's a higher end bed. There are beds for $200,000. And there are beds for $1.50 you can get from China that don't work. So you got to decide what makes sense. Our bed costs about $1,400 a month to lease. So there are people that have more money than they have health. They buy this bed for their home. It's called the Trifecta Light. Now, Trifecta stands for the triple effect originally of face, fat, and healing. That's why it came up with Trifecta. It wasn't my name. One of our executives came up with the word Trifecta, and it stuck. So originally it was just for one particular model, and then the whole company became Trifecta Light. With that understanding of the triple effect of face, fat, and healing, but there are actually now, we know, 5 other divisions of the company, and that includes men's health, women's health, where a woman, within a couple of weeks, their very painful periods are they're going to be less, if not go away. We've seen great results even with ovarian cysts. And another thing that comes up is hair rest. Hair in general, as a woman ages, in some cases, they start seeing that there's more hair in their hairbrush than they would like. And that typically within a couple of weeks, that stops if you're using red light therapy. And it's not uncommon within the second month, the hair starts regrowing. And so there's that hair restoration issue there. But then another category is athletes. If you're an athlete, serious athlete, and you're not getting in our bed before the activity, you're making a mistake. Because if the guy to your left who's running against you is getting in the bed, and everything else is the same. You've been racing against this guy forever, and sometimes he wins, sometimes you win. But if you get in the bed, you will see your stamina much better, your jumping, your running, everything will improve dramatically. And you get in the bed after the activity, and you will recover much faster. So it drives me crazy when my favorite teams, I'm in Los Angeles. So I like the Dodgers, I like the Lakers, and their players keep getting injured, and I'm screaming at the television, get in the bed. It's not so easy when you're going up against what's traditional, which is medicine and drugs and traditional therapy, which doesn't include full body red light bed. What I'm recommending people to do is to go to trifectalight.com, and there are 3 possibilities. One, you want to try it out. It's 6 visits. Each dose is 12 minutes. Try it for 6 visits, and I feel very confident that you're going to see a significant difference, or at least some difference where you hadn't seen anything before. We had this one lady that had horrible Parkinson's, and she was embarrassed to go to church. She had many other symptoms, but the worst thing were the tremors. And the tremors meant that she couldn't hold her Bible. And after a relatively short period of time, she's holding the Bible. She's all tremors, but they're so much less pronounced that she easily is able to hold the Bible. So we hear this kind of stuff all the time, how it helps, not just with pain, not just with symptoms, obvious symptoms, but also what we call the ability to function throughout the day. And people talk about this all the time. So you go to the website, you go to Contact Us page. On the left side is find an office nearest you. We can't list all the offices for privacy reasons, and we'll find a location closer to you. And you go try it for 6 visits and see if it doesn't make a difference. And I feel confident it would. On the right side of that page is the possibility of buying it. So some people who have more money, they'll buy it for their home. And then the most common thing of people who are buying it as a business. It's like a magnet, which will drive tons of business to a facility. And it's kind of the fun thing of making money, but also you're going to get more people thanking you for helping them in their lives than you've ever seen before. And the beauty of this is that it doesn't require a health practitioner's license. These lights are so safe, You couldn't hurt somebody if you tried. So you don't need a major license. What you need is the knowledge of working with the body. So massage therapists and estheticians, and of course, all the health industry and all the fitness industry and weight loss industry. I mean, you can go on for all these different categories that people will experience with the kind of level of success. So we've had people who just ripped something, tore something, burned something, and they're in desperate shape. We might see them every day. But the traditional conservative treatment is 3 times a week. So all the things that I mentioned before, the Parkinson's, dementia, all those things that are chronic, arthritis. We had a lady that had severe rheumatoid arthritis. Now, it was tragic for her because she had been a professional dancer earlier in her life. And she was older. She wouldn't be professionally dancing at that point, but she'd be dancing. She'd be active. And then she wound up with rheumatoid arthritis. She couldn't do any of those things. She couldn't even use the key to get into her room, into her apartment. So she had to knock on the door of her neighbor who was get assistance to get into her home. And with a relatively short period of time of using the bed, she didn't have those issues. And she's back, not professionally dancing, but she's back able to dance. So it's about giving somebody back to their way of life that they want. And that to me is extremely important. We used to call it activities of daily living. So if the person, for lawsuits and stuff like that, if someone can show that their activities of daily living have been affected by the accident, the workers' comp, whatever it is, there's a financial return on that. They'll get paid and compensated for that loss. But in my mind, what I'm trying to do is to get people to have a better in their activities of daily living. So somebody will come to me and say, I never was able to sit on the floor because my back hurts so much, and now I can, so I can play Monopoly on the floor with my kid. I mean, that's not the common thing, but it's just another way of showing how someone's life can be changed when they're doing better. When they take care of themselves and incorporate red light therapy in that process.
The book, Illuminated, Healing, Unraveling the Mysteries of Light Therapy, talks about the effects that this creates for your body, and that includes boosting immune function and helping with all sorts of things in hormonal health. And these are things you don't necessarily think about because we're thinking about the physical. Oh, this is like with my dog, the muscle aches and pains and stuff. And even my husband, gout, he uses it for gout attacks when he has certain areas that are painful. And this is something that heals you from the core out. That's incredible.
Yeah. Chiropractors believe in removing the interference and then getting out of the way and let the innate intelligence do its thing. Whether you're religious or however you want to believe, there is an innate intelligence to your body that knows that if you get a cut, your job is to maybe clean out the wound and put a bandage over it so it doesn't fester, and then let the body do its thing. It will heal if you get out of the way. So when you get the mitochondria back to normal, then all these other things, it has to do with nitric oxide, which is very important for your body circulation. You'll have better blood circulation with the nitric oxide. That it's not the direct result, but it's a side effect, good side effect, that will happen when your mitochondria comes back to life. All the other things come back to life, or many of the other things come back to life. And that's what we're looking for. But it's not complicated. It's not. You get in the bed 6 times and you'll see. Most people are not convinced by you and I talking. They need to experience it. Yeah, they can read my book. Yeah, they can go online, but you got to try it. And if you try the less expensive, cheaper stuff, the results are subtle and they're not going to be as extreme. When you use a medical grade, high-end bed that's going to cover your body head to toe, left and right, front and back, inside and out, affecting as many cells at the same time, that's what's important. You mentioned the pads. I like the pads. And that's the only thing we made until we came up with the bed. We were manufacturing the pads. They're fine. And they're more for fat loss than anything else. But if you want the really amazing change, what people don't realize is how expensive it is to be sick. They don't get it. So let me give you an example. Ulcerative colitis. This one person, if you know about it, it's disgusting. So you got bleeding diarrhea, and they don't know how to stop it. They put you on the prednisone, which sometimes works, doesn't. Remember, all the drugs have horrific side effects. So now let's talk about one thing that they used with my patient while she was in the hospital. They couldn't figure anything out, so they put her on Remicade. Now, Remicade is given as a biologic, which means that It's an IV drip. So she's on this for 1 hour. And it kind of, after 2 doses, it kind of made a change, perhaps, so she was able to leave the hospital. Because imagine, if you have bleeding diarrhea and have no control, if you're 30 seconds away from the toilet, you're probably going to soil yourself. So you're housebound. You can't get out. You can't do anything. It's horrible. Now, let's talk about that Remicade. I want you to do me a favor. This is a game I'm going to play with you, and I want you to forgive me for this, but take a guess how much that 1 dose of Remicade costs.
Multiple thousands?
Yes.
Okay. How about 4,500?
Add a zero.
Oh.
And then another $5,000. It's over $50,000.
Naturally.
What I'm saying to you is, first of all, on the one hand, how do you compete with something? If somebody can make that kind of money, or they can make $40,000 in surgery or whatever, how do you compete with that? I've been doing this for almost, 47 years. And I surrendered a long time ago that I'm going to just do the best I can. You just do the best you can, because the competition or the other side is about drugs and surgery and hospital stays and stuff. And I don't mind them making money. I don't. But I think you want to try natural stuff first. And if that doesn't work, then yeah, okay. Thank God there's surgery. Thank God there's these things available, because it doesn't always work on everything. But if you haven't tried the natural way first, I think that's a mistake. People don't know how expensive it is to be sick. And if you can do everything you can to stay well, it's not just the money. You can't function. You can't have a quality life. It's all about getting a better quality of life. So when we take somebody who's severe Parkinson's and horrible dementia, and they don't know what to do with her, she's belligerent and a danger to herself and others in the family. So they're about to put her in a home. So he said, last resort, let's try the bed. So in the first visit, getting somebody with Parkinson's into a bed is not an easy task. But they got her in the bed. And guess what? Getting out just after that one visit was much easier. And over the weeks and over the months, it got to the point much earlier than that she was able to get in and out of bed herself. And she's lucid. She's not young. She's 85 years old. But her quality of life is that much better. And that's what it's about. I don't care what you have. Try it for 6 visits. I'm not practiced, so I'm not inviting you to my office. I'm telling you, try it and see if it makes a difference. And if we don't have an office in your area, then I want you to go to a health practitioner in that area and tell them to get the bed so that he can use it on you and thousands of other people in the area that will benefit so tremendously from this type of technology.
If you want more information, get the book, Illuminated Healing, Unraveling the Mysteries of Light Therapy, because it talks about, well, for one thing, there are testimonials, but it talks about all the levels of healing that happen and can happen with this kind of technology. And I remember back in the, 60s, 70s, they were talking about one day you'll heal with light. I think they knew that because they'd already been doing the research on the animals, and it said, this is a slam dunk. We need to do more of this, but it's taken so long to reach the public and it's a work in progress. But seeing the results I've seen, I think it's at least worth reading about if you're considering this kind of therapy for yourself.
I'd also tell them to go to the website, trifectalight.com, go to the Contact Us page, and we'll find, you request information about finding a location closest to you, and we'll do the best we can finding the closest location to you, and then try it for 6 visits. If it doesn't do anything, which I've hardly ever seen, there's only 2 possibilities. One, they didn't plug it in, or it didn't work for you, but I don't see that very often. But on the other hand, you might want to buy such a thing, and that's on the right side of the right side of that Contact Us page. And then throughout the whole website, there's a ton of information, but also I really recommend you go to YouTube, you put in Trifecta Light Official, is one word, and there's over 120 videos, and they've done a beautiful job. My interviews and other people's interviews and all kinds of stuff about the science, about the technology, and about all kinds of things pertinent to red light therapy.
How do you separate yourself from the others? Because this is not just, all of a sudden it seems to be exploding in terms of popularity, availability, information. What's the difference?
So the main thing is the absolute main thing is the quality of the lights. So you want strong lights that don't get hot. That's number one, that really are very effective. And you want these unique 4 wavelengths that are beautiful to penetrate. There are some companies that try to compete in silly ways, and they put all kinds of colors in there. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. So they'll put in blue or green for acne. Now, I'm telling you that our red and near infrared will handle the most serious acne, psoriasis, eczema, dermatitis, anything on the skin. The results are spectacular. Even raised moles, we've seen them fade, if not disappear. But so that's number one, is very powerful lights that don't get hot. Again, heat dilates blood vessels, bring more blood to the surface. That would block the penetration of light. So if you've ever heard of red light sauna, it's self-defeating. You don't want to combine those two things together. In fact, in the morning, that would be the first thing you do is red light therapy. If you're going to have a routine, and then do anything else after that. Then you can play racquetball. Then you can go swimming, whatever, exercise, whatever. But you want to get into bed when you're not have been active and you didn't do anything to dilate, like hot heat or anything like that. The second thing is you want the top canopy, as it comes down, come right down onto your body. You want the lights as close to your body as possible. As you come away from the body, with the lights, you lose power exponentially. It's not the weight of the top canopy, it's the ability to approximate your body as close as possible. But the third thing is the ability to pulse the wave. I love frequency. I've been dealing with frequency technology for 20 years, and it's good. I mean, it's not the miracle of red light therapy, but when you add another layer, it's even better. So we have the capability of pulsing the wave. So we include a sound generator, so you have sound frequency. We have the light frequency, and then when you get off the bed, you go on the whole body vibrational device, which we also include. We include 32 things with the coaches, which includes training and coaching and all that stuff. But you get on the whole body vibrational device, so that's another way of having vibratory frequencies. So you're getting a lot of different ways of pulsing that wave using frequency to help and assist in the whole process of healing. So again, we've got strong lights, no heat. We've got lights that come right down onto your body, and then we have the ability to pulse the wave. There are other great features, but those 3 are the most important.
WebMD is also a resource to talk about red light therapy.
I'm going to go you one better.
Yeah.
If you go to Google Scholar, which is scholar.google.com, which is the scholarly version of, and the reason why I bring this up is because now you're going to get not only WebMD and PubMed, but you're also going to get articles describing it. So not everyone's going to understand the scientific study,
right?
But they'll see the articles. And remember, the stuff that's on Google Scholar is not the junk that you see on the regular. Well, not everything's junk in there, but people can say whatever the heck they want. But on Google Scholar, it's not ranked by how much money someone paid. It's about how pertinent something is of what you're asking. So you go to Google Scholar, put in red light therapy. Would it surprise you that when you press enter, that you would get over 3.5 million entries, double-blind studies, research papers, articles, all kinds of stuff pertinent to red light therapy. And then after you put in the phrase red light therapy, put in lupus or put in anything like that, that you want to know more about. Because people say, well, is it dangerous for this or whatever? There's never been a recorded side effect. You can get into bed. There's one contraindication. It's not a real one. As for pregnant women. If a pregnant woman gets into bed and then gets out of the bed, it's going to help the fetus and the mother. However, if when they deliver, the baby is anything other than perfect, they're going to want to sue somebody. And I tell my practitioners, we're not going to be in that neighborhood. The day after she delivers, let's get her in the bed right away, especially after C-section. She's going to recover so much faster. And the pain will be dissipated so much sooner as well. That's pretty much the only major contraindication. It's a legal one. It's not a real one. Don't treat pregnant women. That's it.
Dr. Carl, thank you. I appreciate your time. I do believe that we have more options in terms of healing than popping a pill. And I'm glad that you are able to provide some of the science and background for people to make their own decision. Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I love the questions you asked, and I hope your audience got a lot out of this. TrifectaLight.com. Try it for 6 visits, and I feel very confident that you're going to see a significant difference.